Yes. Welcome to Cyber Safety Net Stay Safe Online, episode 138. You are a target for a data breach. My name is Mark Anthony Germanos, and I will be the presenter today. You are a target for a data breach, and today I'm talking about a breach that happened at a Pepsi bottler on the East Coast. If they can be a target, you can be a target, so can I, because we're all rich Americans. Today's presentation is sponsored by my fourth book, How Hacks Happen. In How Hacks Happen, there are two personas. There's me, Mark, the good guy, who wants to protect you. And there's Brad Cracker, the bad guy, who wants to rip you off. He says he's good at hacking is easy, and he likes the easy money. And breaching people's security is what he does for a living, and he's pretty good at it. Back in episode 102, I introduced the CIA Triad, or the Confidentiality, Integrity, Availability Triad. Since I'm talking about people's names, addresses, social security numbers, driver's license numbers, and health information going into the wrong hands, I think we're in the confidentiality domain again. The target here was a Pepsi bottler on the East Coast named Pepsi Bottling Ventures. The way things work is that PepsiCo, who we see advertised every day, produces a syrup, and they sell that syrup to bottlers in different markets. And in the Maryland, Delaware, North Carolina, and South Carolina markets, they sell to Pepsi Bottling Ventures. And our friends at Pepsi Bottling Ventures mix this with carbonated water and then sell it in their markets. And they were the target. Here's what we learned from the breach at Pepsi Bottling Ventures. On December 23rd, hackers gained access to their systems. On January 10, people at Pepsi Bottling Ventures discovered the breach. On the 19th, the same people secured the system. Then on February 10, they disclosed. So what have we learned from this? Number one, the hackers had access for almost a month. Between December 23 and January 19, the hackers had free reign. Also, we learned that it's important to collect logs of traffic. This would be logs both from your servers and from your firewalls, because we need to log traffic. This is not easy. I have several clients where I'm logging traffic, and getting it up and running is not easy, not at all. That's why I think you should farm it out, because it's not an easy task. Also, after you review the logs, you'll find that there's a lot of information that you just don't need. And we call that noise. I tell clients, sometimes you collect an avalanche of information. Then you have to plow through it and find what is important or what is actionable. Regardless, you still have to collect the logs. If our friends at Pepsi Bottling Ventures were not collecting logs, then we would not have this timeline. Heck, maybe they wouldn't even know that somebody was on their system. What all was on the system? Well, they have information for their employees. This includes names, social security numbers, driver's license numbers, financial information like their compensation, and healthcare information. This is information that employees trusted to Pepsi Bottling Ventures, and that information was compromised. Usually when I talk about malware or ransomware, I say data was encrypted, somebody got a message on the screen saying pay a ransom, or else that data that was encrypted will never be available to you. And of course, the longer you wait, the more expensive the ransom. But there's another element, and that is that the data is harvested, and then the person who, or the people who publish the ransomware say, you have to pay the ransom, or that information that used to be secret will now go on the internet, or it'll go on the dark web. So there's two elements. One is harvesting data. Two is encrypting the data on your machine and then asking you for a ransom. Another chapter of disgustingness, in my opinion. And if you're looking at this slide and saying, yeah, Mark, I've seen that slide before, that's because I also had this slide in the previous PowerPoint for Heritage Provider Network, who's a healthcare provider in Southern California. They had a similar breach, and I had this slide for that presentation too. SSDD. Armed with this information, I ask, what will you do? You will take one of three courses. Number one, you'll prepare for ransomware because some of my peers feel it's not an if question, but a when question. When ransomware gets on your computers or your network. And in this case, it's when a breach happens. Some people feel it's not an if, but a when question. Number two, you may do nothing. You may say, oh, Mark, I'm under the radar. I don't have enough money to be attractive. Well, let me advise you that if this Pepsi bottler on the East Coast was attractive, everybody is. Or you'll choose option three, you'll ignore because you got other things to think about. I'm done. I know your time is valuable. I know there are other places to be, but you chose to be here. You chose to listen to me, Mark Anthony Germanos, tell you that if a Pepsi bottler on the East Coast can incur breach, so can you. You got to be careful out there. Thank you for watching.